We are committed to creating and sharing knowledge that empowers children and young people to understand the steps they can take to reduce their risks, increase their resilience to mental health problems, and improve their mental health.
Our vision is to create a world with a sound mental health for all.
People do attempt suicide.
Naturally, people are bound to judge, but judging and expressing the judgment is something that we can reserve for ourselves.
We find that suicide bereavement is even more difficult than losing someone through natural death.
Be empathetic in the way you approach their situation, because if you show too much sympathy, they'll also start feeling guilty.
Greetings to you all. Welcome to our show, Tap In.
When someone is suicidal, it's very difficult to tell that the person is suicidal because a lot of us have got a judgmental approach to how things are or how people look at it. By its nature, suicide, for those people who commit suicide, they're basically there to punish the people that are left behind. So in most cases, they're looking for attention. So we need to be able to give an ear to listen and to pay attention to what details, what hints they put across for us to know.
We all know that death on its own is not easy. When you experience death, you go through what is called grief or bereavement after the experience.
To understand that they are not the ones to blame for this condition. So in order for them to reach acceptance, you may, as a relative, you may not be able to assist them through it all, but if you take them to a professional, somebody, the professionals can help them to go through the process of healing.
Greetings to you all. Welcome to our show, Tap In. Today we are discussing Suicide Series Part 4. This is the week 4 that we've been covering about suicide. So my name is Tawanda Murepa, and I'm the director and founder of Young People Mental Health Trust. Tap In Show is brought to you by Young People Mental Health Trust, Your Pet Health. So today in our show we have Dr. Mutambara. Dr. Mutambara, she will introduce herself.
Thank you, Tawanda. My name is Dr. Julia Mutambara. I'm a clinical psychologist and a family therapist based in Gweru, Zimbabwe.
Okay, Dr. Mutambara, thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Edith Kasukuwere, the Public Relations Officer for Young People Mental Health Trust. I'm also a rehabilitation technician and counselor.
Thank you for joining us on our show today. Okay, for our viewers, we are still on COVID-19. We are still, we're supposed to keep those regulations. So mask up, social distancing, so that we actually avoid unnecessary, life losses and stuff. So we are just doing it to make sure that we are doing this show online, to make sure that everyone is covered and to make sure that everyone is safe and is well. So to start our show today, we want to ask questions like what are the issues that the bereaved face? When these issues to do with suicide, we have the families, we have friends, actually, of who actually lost their loved ones. What really they actually face through that transition? What's really going on? So, Dr. Mutambara, can you actually take us through on what the bereaved faced, in terms of the bereavement processes?
Thank you very much, Tawanda. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Losing someone through suicide is very difficult. We all know that death on its own is not easy. When you experience death, you go through what is called grief or bereavement after the experience. Just losing someone through death, or if your relative dies, it's difficult on its own. We find that suicide bereavement, or having to lose someone through suicide, is even more difficult than losing someone through natural death. Why is losing someone through suicide very, very difficult? It is because of a number of reasons. Number one is suicide death is usually sudden and unexpected. It's not like someone has been ill for some time. You don't have time to prepare for the death. Unlike when someone goes through illness and then ends up dying. So it's very sudden. And usually the person who dies is, in most cases, a very healthy person. You wouldn't expect that person to die. That's what makes suicide death very, very difficult to deal with. You are not given time to prepare. You are not given time to say your goodbyes. So it becomes very, very difficult for the people who lose their relative or their significant other through suicide. Also, there is shock amongst the bereavers, where they ask themselves, is this really happening? Or maybe this is a dream. This shock also comes in because usually this is someone who would have been going through some difficult situations. Let's say this person might have been going through divorce. They might have been going through challenges at work, challenges in their relationships, and so forth. So you are shocked. You wouldn't expect the person to take their lives. You would maybe be thinking that it will be okay, they will resolve these things that they are going through, but unexpectedly that person takes their lives. It's very shocking for those who remain behind. And sometimes there is recurring thoughts. You lose someone through suicide, you always ask yourself questions. The big why question. Why did they do this? Why did they end up taking their lives? Why is it that they didn't think about us? Why is it that they didn't share their problems? So there's this big why amongst those who lose their relatives through suicide. You wouldn't find some of these questions being asked by relatives who lose their significant other through normal death. But this big why is mainly found amongst bereavers who lose a loved one through death, through suicide. Also, what is challenging again is sometimes the person who takes their life or who dies from suicide would have discussed with their significant others. They would have shared their intentions. So the big why will be like, why didn't I help? Why didn't I do something? So it's very, very difficult because maybe someone would have told you that he's going through challenges at work and they are hopeless. And maybe you didn't take it seriously. So there's this why question that keeps on coming to the mind, to the thoughts of those who lose someone through suicide. Linked to that is confusion. You try as relatives to make sense of the death. You are confused. Is this what they really want? What happened when they took the pills? Did they ever regret it? What really happened? So there's a lot of confusion. And also, some relatives may end up developing psychological disorders like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety disorders. Let's say your significant other takes their life through suicide and you were maybe in the same room. Just seeing the place where your relative died is very, very difficult for many people. And they may end up reliving the experience. They may end up dreaming about the experience. I've had cases where you are cold and your teenage son is hanged up the tree. It keeps on replaying. It keeps on coming to you. You can't shut off the images. So the significant others may end up developing PTSD, which is high in terms of the chances of developing PTSD are quite high when people lose their relative through suicide compared to normal loss. Again, the other thing that the bereaved face is stigma. We all know that some religions or some religious groups condemn suicide. Some even say the casket or the body of the deceased should not sleep in the hut. Some say from the funeral parlor, the body should go straight to the graveyards. So you have to deal with all that stigma. Maybe people may ask you, why is it that this person didn't spend the night at home like we are used to in the African setting? You really sometimes may not be able to tell them because maybe you have not told people that your significant other has died from suicide. So religion comes in to play. And also religious questions in terms of you are asking, okay, but this one was a religious person. I've had pastors who have died from suicide. You ask yourself, but these are men of God. What really happened? So it's really challenging in terms of the stigma. Also, you face isolation because you really can't give out the details of the death. It becomes very difficult. You isolate yourself because you really can't discuss this. Sometimes you are not prepared to divulge the full information as a family. So it's very stressful and it's very traumatic. Also, in terms of the family, there could be differences in terms of what to say to other people. What do we say to the work colleagues? What do we say to the other churchmates? Do we hide this? It's a lot of confusion for the family. Again, you find that after suicide, usually and in most cases, police is involved. So you need to make statements, you need to visit the scene, a lot of things that you need to do at the period when you are grieving. And sometimes it's very, very difficult. In some instances, the people who lose their relative through suicide may face anger. It's normal to face anger in bereavement, even in other normal types of death. The bereaved face or experience anger. But with suicide, you are angry with the perpetrator. Why did they do this? You think it's rejection. Why didn't they tell me? Why did they do this? They don't like me. Is it like they don't like me so much? So in a nutshell, these are the issues that are faced by people who are bereaved, who have lost their loved one through suicide. Over to you, Tawanda, if you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you so much for actually raising out those issues. Basically, you give much emphasis on the mental health aspect of what the bereaved family actually faced. What about the other issues to deal with the finances, issues to do with financial issues, like do they also face those issues, maybe in terms of that process? Do they also face those issues rather than mental issues that you discussed about?
Yes, quite relevant. Yes, the bereaved families may face financial difficulties, but why I had left that out is because financial issues can also be faced by families of relatives who die from normal, let's say normal death. It's not just confined to financial issues. It's not, financial issues are not just confined to suicide related bereavement. So yes, if you lose your breadwinner through suicide, it's very, very difficult because obviously financially you depended on them. So to start getting to your feet again, to start getting food on the table again, may be very difficult. And I've had some insurance companies that don't disburse some funds if someone has died through suicide. And that is very, very difficult because you lose what you are supposed to get as a family. Of course, I'm not really sure of the nitty-gritties of what insurance companies say about death through suicide, but I know that some insurance companies may not pay out if it is death through suicide. So very, very relevant financial issues amongst those who lose their loved ones through suicide. But remember, these financial issues can also be faced by those who lose their loved ones through other types of death or normal death.
Okay, thank you. We also have some effects regarding the family unit support and also some effects regarding the social connection, maybe with the society, whereby actually the society will not actually allow or will not actually tolerate those, who lost their loved one through suicide. And I think there's also an issue there that needs to be raised on actually how the society can also help those people who lost their significant ones through suicide. So, and to you, Edith, we are actually, want to know issues like how to help them, what to avoid, and what not to avoid when you are helping those families or those people who lost their significant ones through suicide.
Okay, thank you so much, Tawanda. So you find that the issues that Dr. Mutambara pointed out are the major issues that the people who have lost their loved ones through suicide face, and what to avoid first is, as a family, like we have the extended family and even the society at large, avoid talking about the suicide more often to these people. Like, avoid reminding them that they lost their loved one through suicide. But what you can actually do is you should be there to support them. Be empathetic in the way you approach their situation, because if you show too much sympathy, they will also start feeling guilty, thinking that they were the chief cause for this condition. But you're supposed to be empathetic in the way that you're supposed to be assisting them as they as they go through this process. Help them, be there for them, like you can do regular visits to them, maybe see how they are doing, help them go about their day-to-day work, and also you can refer them for counseling, because definitely they're going to be going through depression. They don't really understand why they lost their loved one. So you should maybe refer them for counseling. And we have organizations that are giving free counseling. For example, Young People Mental Health Trust. Refer them for a counselor. They get assistance. The counselors will help them go through the process of grief, because in most instances they are in denial, and all we want is for them to reach acceptance, to understand that they are not the ones to blame for this condition. So in order for them to reach acceptance, you may, as a relative, you may not be able to assist them through it all, but if you take them to a professional, somebody, the professionals can help them to go through the process of healing. Because if they don't heal, they are definitely also going to end up being suicidal, and we want to try and avoid that. And also, another thing to avoid is to be alone. As the one who lost somebody, avoid being alone for a long time, because this will definitely make you think maybe about why your loved one had to commit suicide, or why they left you. Sometimes they may have been your pillar of strength, but you didn't know they also had problems. So try as much as possible to be under the company of other people. Try as much as possible to join social gatherings, be involved, find other hobbies, not to spend too much time in an isolated place. Join other social groups. You can even find other support groups. We do have support groups for those maybe that are going through grief, or maybe that are going through depression. Join those support groups, be active in those support groups, and you don't have to force yourself to talk about it earlier, but try as much as possible to open about it through through different stages. Try to open about it, try to be open, find someone you trust, talk to them, make them understand how you feel, make them understand where you stand because of the loss you had of your loved one. And that person you trust can then help you to go through this process. Over to you, Tawanda.
Okay. Thank you so much for raising those issues. There's also an issue of we should actually tell them it's not their fault. It's not their fault that they lost their beloved ones through suicide. So yeah, you raised an important points there. Also issues to do with we should accommodate them, we should listen to them, we should talk to them, and also we should also try by all means to avoid not to repeat like not to actually talking those issues, what really happened and what really transpired. So we just need to talk about other things, other stuff, so that they can heal. So over to you, Dr. Mutambara. Do you have anything to add on how best we should help these people to copy?
Okay. For those who are going through suicide-related bereavement, what they can do for themselves, they need to stay close to family members as possible. They need to stay close to each other as much as possible, as it said, to avoid isolating each other, or just look out for family members who are not talking as much, maybe on WhatsApp, going to family gatherings as before. They need to stay close to each other. And for these people, again, I would encourage that they need to be prepared to face the ups and downs of bereavement. One day you feel like you are doing so well, and next day you are back into the depressive phase. They need to be prepared for the ups and downs of bereavement, and also to be prepared to face the reminders, because reminders will be everywhere. I had a client who witnessed someone hanging from a tree. They had died from suicide, they had hanged themselves. So they were not related per se, but this client now had difficulties walking under trees because every tree to him was a reminder. So bereaved families need to prepare themselves for reminders, because definitely almost every day there'll be something to remind them about their loved ones who passed away through suicide. Also, I encourage people who are experiencing suicide related bereavement to try to get to a point where they accept some realities. I know that death itself is very difficult, but to accept that there are some things that cannot be explained. We don't have to find meaning in everything. We just need to know that some questions will never be answered. Because the problem is, I said, people have these recurring thoughts of why. It helps to accept that I may not get the answers. Also, it helps for the families to read around to get more information about mental disorders, because most suicides or people who end up taking their lives through suicide would have been suffering from a mental disorder. So from a mental disorder of some sort. So families need to know about these disorders like depression, PTSD, schizophrenia, that their loved ones may have been suffering from without their knowledge. I think that is what I can say. That is what can help the families to move through the bereavement process. Over to you.
Okay, do you think our society should actually improve the way that we handle these cases? You know, as you highlighted earlier on, do you think we need to improve? And if we are to improve, which way are we going to take in order that we actually catch up for those who lost their loved ones through suicide, especially in the stages?
Okay. Thank you very much, Tawanda. I would like to highlight what I said before, religious groups. Those religious groups that are still condemning suicide, those religious groups that do not allow for normal bereavement to take place when relatives have lost someone through suicide need to be educated. They need to change how they see things. We know normally when someone dies in the African setting or in Zimbabwe, it's 2 days to 3 days of mourning. People gather, and usually the last night, the casket of the bereaved sleeps in the house for burial the next day. If we still have religions that do not accept this, we need to relook. We need to revisit. Religious leaders need to be educated, because that is usually very difficult for the families. It leads to more grief, it leads to more trauma, it leads to more stress, because the normal bereavement processes have not been carried out. So that's my contribution. Society needs to be educated. Society needs to, we need to raise awareness in our societies that when we do the bereavement rituals, when we have our relative sleeping in our house and people singing throughout the night, this is not meant to benefit the deceased. If people could take note of that, it's not meant to benefit the deceased. We are sort of punishing the living by not allowing them to grieve normally. We are punishing the surviving members of the family, which should not be that way. We are sort of punishing them for the sins of the person who would have taken their lives through suicide. So I really think as communities in our different sectors, we could revisit suicide-related bereavement processes and make them as close to normal death bereavement processes. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for raising out those important notes. Edith, do you have anything to add on what the society should do?
Okay, to add on to what the society should do, I feel that we who understand issues to do with mental health should also continue raising awareness. We should try to get to the societies, help them to get to know and understand mental health issues, because like Dr. Mutambara pointed out, it all starts with not understanding the mental health problems that are affecting the people within the societies. And sometimes mental health issues are being equated to witchcraft communities. So we have to try and raise awareness, starting from the conditions. Like, people should really know what is depression, because some people, they think depression doesn't exist in the young children or young adults, but that's why it's now more common. We even have other conditions that come secondary to substance abuse. But how many parents really understand it? Some parents, when they see their children are behaving in a certain way, they don't even take time to teach those children or to take them through the processes that they are supposed to go through. So it is important to raise awareness in terms of mental health issues first, so that if people get to understand, they'll get to be there for the person, and probably maybe will also reduce the number of suicide cases. Yes, we may not be able to get to everyone in a short space of time, but let's make these long-term projects, so that we try and eradicate that issue to do with people having little or no knowledge regarding mental health issues. People should know, parents should understand their children, the children should understand their parents, because sometimes some parents they are suffering inside, because we as the children, we don't understand why they are silent, but maybe they are suffering from the economy, they're suffering from their work, and in the end you just hear your mother died, and you don't know what you were supposed to do, because you didn't know maybe they were depressed. So it is important that we also spread awareness in terms of the other mental health problems. Thank you.
Okay, you just remind me of what happened in South Africa last week. There's actually a girl who was aged 22 who actually killed herself. She jumped from the 10th floor, and now the family is they lost actually their loved ones, and now they're in the process of bereavement. They actually lost their daughter, and also there's also a case in Gweru. I'm sure Dr. Mutambara might have heard of it. A girl actually committed suicide. She was young, around Form 3, and now the families actually, they are on their bereaved processes, and I think there is also need for for us as the health as the counsellors to also engage with the churches and with the family members on how to how best they can actually do the funeral process and everything. From South Africa, they were actually saying they are not allowing anyone to come to the funeral. The information is strictly monitored, and the family is actually not proud. And there are issues that are being raised on Twitter, issues to do with suicide and demons. So now, how then will it now affect the family when they actually, when they actually heard that there are people who are saying that your daughter has been dying because she possessed demons, she joined Illuminati, she actually is the work of the devil. Those bad words. How then now can we actually help the people from the society not to engage much more on this? She was evil. There's demonic possessions. There's something like that, and people are crying. People are actually mourning their beloved ones, and people are now saying those negative effects. How do we then actually how do we then approach, or how do we then deal with that scenario? Dr. Mutambara, do you have anything to add on?
Oh, thank you, Tawanda. Maybe there are two issues here. Someone saying bad things about the person who would have died in face to face, like in real life, like talking to you one-on-one. And we have number two, where you are talking about the social media platforms perpetuating bad information about the person who would have passed away. In the first instance, if someone comes to you, you are bereaved, you are going through the mourning process, and they tell you bad things about the person who would have died, I feel it's good to just assertively tell those people what's on your mind. Tell them you are not prepared to hear what they are trying to tell you. Just be assertive enough. For the people who be passing out information on social media handles, there isn't much you can do. That's the bad side of social media. Of course, it's good, we communicate, we catch up on each other and everything, but that's the bad side of social media. The best, if you are on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media handles, if you find it to be overwhelming, it's better to quit those platforms until you can engage once more. You really can't do anything about people who are saying things on social media, but maybe remove yourself from the platforms and have time to go through the bereavement process. I think that's my contribution for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Mutambara, for being part of this show today. And also thank you so much, Edith Kasukuwere, for being part of this show today as we're discussing issues related to suicide and bereavement processes. The churches, they don't bury the person who committed suicide properly.
Number two, our business is not to judge people, Tawanda. Our business is not to judge people. Our business is to serve people. And according to scripture, everybody deserves a decent burial. You've got an angry soul. You've got a bleeding soul. So all you are seeing now is a manifestation of the condition of the soul. And unfortunately, the soul has got nothing to do with you are apostle, you are reverend, you are prophet, you are bishop, you are whatever. if your soul is vexed, the soul can affect, both the spirit and the body.
Okay, so we've come to an end of our show. This is Tap In, and I am Tawanda Mrepa from Young People Mental Health Trust. We meet again next week as we'll be discussing our suicide series part 5.